no wonder I understand why he got all shook up when he went down to the South Pole to the base and stuff that they're exploring there, and they had to rush him out and get him back home because who knows why he was all shook up about finding out that stuff that he thought he knew could well not have been everything that was going on. So here we are. We find ourselves here in 2019, and we're at a point of what we're calling full disclosure. And the main thing that I talk about when I am invited to go to different programs and things is there are still a lot of people out there that have been involved with the space program, some of them with the secret part of space program, some of them part of the military. And a lot of them have passed away, but a lot of them are still there. And I tell them, you need to come forward because the only real protection you have is the same as like Hoagland told me, make you as much of a public person that's come forward and be sure you got the evidence and documentation to be able to prove that what you say is true, the same that I do, then you're safe. Because, they don't want to, they, big capitals, they, whoever it is that is trying to maintain total secrecy, have a ways of let's say that we cease to exist. And whether it's direct, indirect, or otherwise, I don't want to get into that. But I feel a whole lot more safe since I did come forward and made the archive that I created, hundreds of pictures and documents and evidence. Yes, go ahead.
I have a question for you. Yeah. So one of the catch-22s about when people have involvement in the secret military or whatever is that it is a secret and the government or the powers that be block the information getting out, and you don't have proof of your involvement in that faction. So, like, for example, our dear friend Andrew Bushago, he has no, physical paycheck proof or anything like that, right? So you have to get your proof by finding other witnesses that have been in the program. Right. And, and they do die all the time, like William Whitecrow just passed, Robert O'Dean passed last year, the people that have the story, or, Neil Freer was Anunnaki research. We're losing, stitching all these people that have pieces of the puzzle. So we really encourage you from coming out. But what do you recommend to people? How do they get proof? How do they gather? And is it really that essential right now to have absolute proof? I know Robert Lazar couldn't prove that he was in the directory because they go like Orwellian fiction. They erase us. They can hairbrush us out, remove our names from the database, and we don't even exist anymore. So let's talk about that. What can we do to gather proof, or what should we do instead of that? Go ahead. Back to you, Ken. Thanks.
Okay, you bet. And when we talk about being able to come up with truth, in my case, I had the actual documents from NASA and the government on where I was and what was going on, and as well as the pictures and the slides and the videos. All of those things are available. Now, when it gets down to exactly what else was really going on, I've discovered that, and thankfully I was able to had a contact with Dr. Sasha Lessin, who is actually a professional therapist and psychologist and I guess a psychotherapist, I'm not sure. But in order to go to hypnotic regression and go back, because now I've discovered that in addition, now help me out here just a little bit here with Andrew Bushago, the way he wound up with a lot of his activities being proven is there are several of us that have also been involved in the space programming, going through the jump rooms and being able to go there. And going back through my history of my life, I find out even as a very young child, even at 12 years old and younger, where I was actually, and I think part of it, I'm sitting at my desk and I'm looking at a picture of my father, who was a captain in the Army Air Corps before it became the Air Force during World War II, and he lost his life in World War II. And I've often been wondering whether or not he really did, because that was also at the same time that President Eisenhower made his arrangements with extraterrestrials. And we're getting to find out that a lot of us as we were young, have been tapped because it's part of the family in reality. So one of the things we discovered through hypnotic regression on me is that I was also on Mars at the same time that Andrew Bishago showed up there and William White Crow, and I was piloting what I call the little hopper, which is allows me, due to the reduced gravity of Mars compared to the Earth, take this little craft and basically make an arc and go from one location over to another. And they were, the way that we wound up proving each other's events is that people that have come forward that have been parts of the secret, I call it the secret space program. It's not that. Let's call it, at any rate, proof that they were actually there, that I actually wound up involved in the space program more than I realized that I had. Now it's kind of hard to, at times, to realize, and you go back and look at what was going on in your life, that where we're now getting information about our bases that are on, I say our Homo sapiens have bases on Mars as well as the moon, and with a fleet of deep space spacecraft, not flying saucers, but we're talking about craft that are more than a mile or half a mile in length. That is where some of the smaller craft and things can go. So there has been a breakaway civilization going on right under our nose that most of us aren't even aware of until now that it's all starting to come out. And part of that has to do with our direct contact with extraterrestrials. That they've been very patient watching us humans on Earth mature and grow to the point where we can handle it. The biggest problem we had is, like H.G. Wells did back in 1939, I think it was, did a radio program where they were talking about how a spacecraft landed and these aliens, these big giant machines are going around and they were killing everybody. And onto the radio, people, they didn't hear that it was a story they were telling, a make-believe story. Some people actually jumped off the top of buildings and committed suicide. They thought that there was a war going on with aliens. So us humans had to wait until now. You know, if you go in and you ask people, do you believe that there are aliens out there? And everybody said, well, of course, we're not the only ones in the universe. So we're at a point where it was being kept secret for fear that people would panic. We're at a point now that we're at a point saying, no, we're frustrated with the governments, and I say plural, all over the world. Governments have kept all the secret, and of course they felt they were doing it for our own good, because we weren't ready to handle it. But now, Homo sapiens, us human earthlings, so many of us have had direct one-on-one experience with extraterrestrials, different varieties, different, I call them species, but different types of intelligent beings from other parts of the universe and galaxies. So we are at a point now where the governments are trying to figure out, okay, how can they come forward, disclose that we have been in contact for the last 40, 50 years. Maybe, actually, if you go back in history, you find out that they've been involved in the growth of humans on planet Earth, to where we are now advanced far enough in technology as well as in maturing as a species that we're ready to join the rest of the intelligent beings in the universe. So not that they're all are. You'll find out, kind of, those of you followed Star Trek and things, and they sometimes would land on planets where the people were not as advanced as we are getting here on planet Earth. But we're at a point now where we're ready to take our own position within the intergalactic sentient beings throughout the universe. And now it's coming forward. And that's why I'm really excited in being part of what we're being dubbed as a full disclosure. We've had little bits and pieces that have been trial tested throughout the universe and throughout the earth and other nations that people can now say, well, yeah, I think there's probably, because there's enough people in going on a one-on-one type direct contact with the various different types of species. And as usual, there's probably some negative beings out there that would like to take over things, but the majority, the truth will come out. What was that little saying the guy said, I think it was during Harry Potter, and the truth will prevail. Let's hope that it does that way. So that's kind of what I see going on right now. So those are people out there that have had direct contact with extraterrestrials or experiences themselves. Now's the time to come forward, because you have protection of the masses, and I say masses because we're not out here by ourselves. So many people have come forward now with their personal experiences that you'll just be joining the clan, and like in ours, we were actually, when you're going back and finding out where we were and what happened, then we back up and prove the other person that's come forward and says, well, I was doing this and this in the part of the secret spooks program. They can say, well, as a matter of fact, you can check the reports, and I have the records on mine to prove where I was, and that helps us get the facts and the truth out there for the world. So just stand by. We're getting the truth out there. Does that sound about right?
I love it. Thank you. Yeah, I love it. Let's get people out there telling their stories. TJ, are you there?
I am.
I wanted to ask
Can you hear me?
you. Yes, I can. No. I wanted to ask you about the Allied Command, because we've been talking about the secret space program and calling it different names for all this time, but you were involved in the Allied Command. That was what your faction of the secret space program, for the lack of any other term or way to describe it, was called. Can you tell us about the Allied Command?
Okay. Well, I'd like to preface that with we were chosen, and that sounds funny, but I believe even William Tompkins used that word. Ken, I don't know if you can put your hand on his book, but or can see it, but you could let us know the name of William Tompkins' book, because what I'm going to bring up
Selected
about
by Extraterrestrials. It was called Selected by Extraterrestrials.
Right.
Selected by Extraterrestrials. Very good book. Very good book.
Okay. And Ken and I had talked about doing what we're doing now, and in answer to Janet's question then, selected by extraterrestrials, I would like to suggest that we're all extraterrestrials just visiting this planet, as I said in the beginning of the show. Doesn't mean that, well, goodness, I'm sorry about that. I guess you could hear that because it's in the inside of my computer. But Janet, can you hear me? Uh-oh.
Yes, we can hear you. I'm muting so you don't hear, because I'm taking notes while you're talking for the page, because I had to redo our show page because Teri's not here. So I'm muting in between. So if there's a little delay, just give me a second. It takes a second for the button to click. But I do want to, okay, so we're talking about the Allied Command.
Yes.
And the faction that you were involved with was called the Allied Command, and Robert O. Dean talked about the Allied Command. So we're going back, 20, 30 years, and he's verified. This is how the whistleblowers and witnesses have, we have proof for each other. This is what we started with. What is proof? So,
all right. So
tell us about that faction. Let me go on mute.
The Allied Command that Robert O. Dean talked about was in the European theater, okay? And as far as I know, he was in the 60s, and to be honest with you, he's a little older than me, and bless his heart, he's passed now. But he was he made it all the way up to Master Sergeant in the United States Army, and he worked at Supreme Headquarters. And he worked directly for, I don't know how to say the gentleman's last name, but he was the SACEUR, and that is for the Supreme Allied Command in Europe, okay? And so working in the European theater. Now, as the planet goes, we're just a blue marble out there, and where I have a mind's eye and a point of origin would be from prior to coming here in 1951. And with the group I work with, apparently as we grow older on the planet, we can look back at our past lives and they will show you a video. So it really helps. It's just like you say, out of body or near death experiences are crossing over where you may or may not see a video. Some do, some don't. But I guarantee you, as soon